straw. I salute the flag of the state of Mexico, via symbol of perfect friendship and united love.
This conference will now be recorded.
Mr. Mayor, real quick.
Sir.
We do have 3 people in the commission room tonight, and they are here to address, I believe, the business item. So just so you're aware, and we will try and get them on camera when the time comes.
All right, thank you, sir. And thanks to those folks for coming tonight. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Just a second, Mayor.
Mayor Snover,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
Here.
Commissioner Padilla,
Here.
Commissioner Randall,
Here.
Commissioner Lewis,
Here.
all present.
Next agenda approval. If there are any items that do not meet the approvals being heard on this evening's agenda, now is the time to remove those items. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as given.
Mayor, I move to approve this evening's agenda as given.
I'll second.
A second. Okay.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
You skipped the proclamation.
Okay.
Mayor, we skipped the proclamation.
Oh goodness, I'm sorry. All right. For some reason I was thinking that was before consent. My mistake. I apologize. Thank you for catching that for me. We have a couple of proclamations this evening. One is for Constitution Week and one is for Piano Month. So, plan is, I've already spoken to Mayor Pro Tem, and because she's done really with the help of the folks, the artists in the chamber and other folks in the city, who've done all of the real heavy lifting and the hard work on this. I'm going to read the Constitution plan and then turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem, let her read the proclamation for Piano Month, and recognize the folks that helped out so much. So, here we are, Proclamation City of Aztec for Constitution. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government and a republic dedicated to rule by law. Whereas September 17th marks the 133rd anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the America Constitution Convention. Whereas being in proper official recognition to this anniversary, patriotic celebration commemorated. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees doing a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designated September 17th, September 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Victor Snow, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of Aztec in the state of New Mexico, hereby proclaim the week of September 17th and 23rd, 2020 as Constitution Week. And I ask our citizens from the ideas framers of the Constitution had in 1787 have been only protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us, this guardian of our liberties. Witness thereof, I have guaranteed to set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Aztec to be fixed this 25th day of August, of our Lord 2020. Mayor Pro Tem, you are up next for Piano Month.
Okay. Whereas the Aztec community has supported Aztec painted pianos as a public art form to be shared and enjoyed in the business community of downtown Aztec, and whereas throughout the month of September, residents and visitors can tour the city and enjoy the beautiful art that has been created on playable pianos, and whereas Aztec artists have volunteered their creative ideas and exceptional talent to decorate the pianos for this year's display, whereas we want to honor Timothy Gordon, Bonnie Adams, Sandy Wayburn, Cynthia Iacovetta, and Connie Hutchison, who have donated hundreds of hours to create this public art that is now part of the city of Aztec. Whereas we seek to find interesting activities that will draw visitors to our city and broaden the entertainment available to encourage people to visit our city. Whereas we have been blessed with the generosity of those who donated pianos that helped with numerous activities to make this happen. Whereas the Aztec Chamber of Commerce has become the partner and sponsor of this cooperative activity between artists and musicians and named this project Big Sound in a Small Town. Now therefore, we, the Aztec City Commission, do hereby proclaim September 2020 as Aztec Painted Piano Month, and all residents are encouraged to visit the pianos and to join us in this special observance.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, it's been really cool. I've seen some videos on Facebook where just people passing through stop and play the pianos, and I've seen some of the other locations like Batman Approved are kind of using that as a little marketing thing. They said they can come on down and get whatever the special is. They're going to have a piano out, so and I've seen other folks being Osborne and some other guys and gals. So I think it's really cool, and I've been talking about it quite a bit lately, but I just want to thank you again, everybody involved, Kenny Rivers, Wayborn, and all the artists. It's just really neat to see something like that get its legs like it has. And thanks so much to all the work that everybody's done on it. So I guess we can move on now to next. Items placed on the consent agenda will be voted upon with one motion. The item proposed is not moved for all commissioners or commissioners may request that the item be heard under items of consent agenda. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to tonight's consent agenda as given.
Mayor, move to as given.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 At the same time. Carla, do we have any folks signed up specific input tonight?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. We are moving into business items. Business item A, final adoption of ordinance 2020-507. Ordinance granting a franchise to Comcast Cable Division of New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Inc. to operate and maintain a cable system in the city of Aztec, New Mexico. Mr. Bueller.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, this is the final adoption of ordinance 2020-507, reference to the franchise Comcast Cablevision agreement. To date, I'm not aware of any comments we've had from the public opposed to the franchise agreement.
Thank you. Open up to any questions or discussion? Commission? Not seeing any. In that case, go ahead and close discussion and entertain a motion for business item A, please.
Mayor, I move to approve the final adoption of ordinance 2020-507, an ordinance granting a franchise to Comcast Cablevision of New Mexico, Pennsylvania Incorporated to operate and maintain a cable system in the city of Aztec, New Mexico.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Carla, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
Aye.
Commissioner Padilla,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. On to business item B. Intent to adopt ordinance 2020-508, ordinance authorizing the sale of certain municipal-owned real property west of the Newman Avenue to Eric Edgerton for the purchase price is $5,400. Mr. Fedora, I'll hand it out to you, and I think Mr. Sebegra might weigh in as well.
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, Mr. Briggs, I'm going to turn it to Mr. Sebegra at this point to walk us through the proposed ordinance.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Sebegra, it's all yours.
All right, Mr. Mayor, City Commission. Mr. Eric Edgerton is seeking to purchase real property from the city of Aztec.
Sharing your emails, you don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share PowerPoint.
Okay, sorry.
So Mr. Eric Edgerton is seeking to purchase 0.29 acres from the city of Aztec on Newman Avenue. The request is primarily based on his mobile home park encroaching on city property. Outlined in the staff report, this mobile home park was approved back in 2004. At the time, through the minutes as submitted within the staff report, it was recognized that there was an encroachment issue. However, Mr. Edgerton is seeking to purchase this property in order to sell the Cottonwood Mobile Home Park. Unfortunately, the encroachment, that's an issue for him, and he is trying to rectify that issue by purchasing the property. City staff has, or at least myself, city manager, city attorney, have met on this item. Based on our direction from legal counsel, if this item was to be entertained by the commission, we would need a survey identifying exactly the acreage and also an appraisal identifying what the valuation of the property is. Mr. Edgerton has obtained both a survey and an appraisal for the property. And I need to point out, this is also part of a zoning issue. And so community development had sent letters pertaining to a PDD, and at such a time, individuals contacted me for more information regarding this issue. So I will stand for questions, but I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of showcase more or less what this area is so that everybody can see. Can everybody see my screen okay? This is the survey that Mr. Edgerton had submitted to us. Okay.
I have a question on that, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Okay, on the survey, is that an outside survey or was it done by GIS?
So the survey was done by an outside firm. However, they did rely on our GIS data, in particular our utility lines. So when you look at the survey that's on the screen now and is also in the commission packet, it shows that there is at least, or indicating an electric utility line underneath at least 7 mobile homes. So at the time, I had reached out to Mr. Edgerton and I had asked him if they could identify the exact location of that utility line. As you know, it's problematic to have a structure over any utility line. For the fact of the matter is, if you need to access that line or repair it for whatever reason, it becomes very difficult when you have a structure on top of it. So, this utility line that's shown on their survey is based on our GIS data.
Okay, what's the age of our GIS data? Has it changed since, I don't know how long ago we've had that updated.
Unfortunately, Commissioner, I don't know the exact answer to that, but I do know that it is updated periodically.
Okay, so is it fairly close to being active or being correct? Or is it, what is your best estimate there, Steve?
I would say it's accurate, give or take a few feet. And that's why a survey is primarily important. Is, we do our best, or GIS does its best to identify the exact placement of line structures and property lines. But ultimately, the best way to go about it is to have, somebody who's on the ground, a surveyor, identifying everything from utility lines to boundary lines. And I mean, that's why surveyors get paid big bucks in this area. So, that's always the best approach. However, GIS data, I would say I'm fairly confident. It's accurate.
Okay, who did the survey?
It is a firm. The firm is Millennial National Land Service.
Okay, local?
I'm sorry, sir. Can you say that again?
Was it local? Are they local? I never heard of them.
The company is not local. However, the surveyor did stamp it. They are approved within the state of New Mexico to do a survey. That was one thing that I had reiterated to Mr. Edgerton, is that we need that seal of approval so that it's official. And they did provide me that information, or at least they did stamp it. And you can see on the right here is the stamp.
Okay.
Mr. Cervera, and this may be a rookie question, but is this standard for surveyors to that GIS data? Or, I mean, is that pretty standard practice in the industry, or is that just something where, I mean, I'm not trying to say one way or the other, or is it just something, to kind of check the block, to get this, you know what I mean? To meet the requirement, I guess.
Just to be completely honest and upfront, a surveyor should rely on their own metrics, their own data to come up with this information, not city data. For example, if our data is inaccurate or missing, and that's utilized for a survey, then that survey is inaccurate. So just to be completely upfront, a good survey will rely on their own data. Because at the end of the day, that's what they're stamping. They're stamping the accuracy based on what it is that they assess. And if they're utilizing our information and it's wrong for whatever reason, they're putting their seal on top of that.
So do they have boots on the ground with it, or is it just strictly GIS? That's my main concern here on that survey point.
Yeah. To the best of my knowledge, is that they went out and went out to the property and surveyed it. But as far as the GIS data, that information, I just don't know. And hopefully Mr. Edgerton can speak to that a little bit more. Those are just our requests. Those were just something that was spotted, and that was something that I mentioned to Mr. Edgerton, is that we want the surveyor to have as much information, as much accurate information, so that the city commission can make an informed and educated decision based on what it is they know.
Now, you also mentioned that there's city-owned and maintained power line underneath a handful and a half of structures, homes, right?
Correct.
So what's the status of that, and how will this sale affect or not? If we were to approve it, that's kind of troubling, that we won't have, that's we're responsible for the maintenance of that, but is that a true statement? Moving forward, regardless of the loans.
That's an accurate statement, and I think to both your point, Mr. Mayor, and Commissioner Pavilla's point, and I just want to showcase, this is our utility line from GIS right now. This is the map. And so this green dashed line, that's the electric line right now. That's underground electric. So that's what we're showing based on our GIS data. And if you look at the survey, you can compare it and contrast how that overlaps. And that's how that information is gained. But to your question, even if we sell the property, and that's why we wanted the most updated and accurate information, because, perhaps our GIS data is off, and maybe some of those structures are not over this utility line. And if not, great, that makes the situation that much easier in terms of us accessing these utility lines if they need to be repaired. Again, this is just another close-up of where we're noticing a potential issue. So to answer your question, just selling the property doesn't eliminate this situation. You're still going to have, regardless of ownership, utility lines under structures. Now, the good thing about this utility line in relation to these structures is these are mobile home units, and they can be used, moved or replaced within due time if necessary. It's a lot harder if it's a permanent built structure and they built and it built over a utility line. That's a lot harder to move. In fact, the only thing you can do in some situations is, either demoing the structure or physically lifting that structure. Since these are mobile homes, it's easier to try to fix the situation if they were moved further or replaced with smaller units so they're not encroaching on those utility lines.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple more comments on this, if I may.
Yes, please.
Okay, one, I think that you touched a real hot spot as far as I'm concerned with this, is having those structures over our utilities, because, in looking at the picture I'm seeing that's in our packet, there's really not a whole lot of room that those trailers could be moved in case we have an issue. And, I would be concerned who would be responsible if we had a major catastrophe, we had a spark or a blow up in there. Is the city going to be financially responsible for those people's places or even our utilities? I'm a little concerned about that, part of that. So, and I have a couple other concerns, but let's address that issue first.
I can address that issue, Commissioner Padilla. In my opinion, I don't know how all these utility easements kind of got obstructed, but technically, we should have access to repair those utilities or make any improvements or check on those utilities that are underground or above ground. And if there's an easement there, it's supposed to be unobstructed. I don't know how it got that way. I would think that might be a liability of the actual property owner. If they're obstructed, we do not have the access or ability to get in there and repair lines if needed, or change lines, or replace lines. I think that would turn into, if they're not, I don't want to say it turn into a nightmare, but if they're not, cognizant of what we got going and they're not willing to work with us, if we do have to get in there, then we're going to have some issues.
Okay, see, and that's a major concern for down the road, but, I think in reading this and going back and looking at the minutes for all the previous meetings and previous commissions, we're paying for their sins to start off with. And I'm a little concerned about what we do with this. The people on Newman have been promised things as well as Cottonwood. And so now we're in a situation where, how are we going to satisfy everybody? Now, that's one of my issues. So, and I still have a couple more issues that I'm concerned about that I'd kind of like to get some clarification on that we can address once we're done with this part. Are you ready for the other one, Steve?
Yes, Commissioner. And I just real quick, I just want to point out, so this picture is showing a meter, and that's why having that survey, if in fact that line is right where that survey is, great, and maybe it's not under the mobile homes. And that's what we wanted, but right now we have to assume the best information we have is that survey and ArcGIS data, and so, there is a real possibility that one of those lines is under those structures. But, this is just to highlight where we see those meters at, and that's the issue of contention right now. And then, there's also a water line in close proximity too. So, that one, I don't see it as close as the underground electric line, but that's still within close proximity. And usually for an easement, you want to have at least 10 feet to get your machinery, a backhoe if needed, to access it in a timely fashion. But, I just wanted to just point that out really quick.
Okay, well, you touched a big word in that, if. And if GIS says that those utilities are under those 7 or 8 or however the mayor said it, a hand and a half, then to me that's going to be an issue that needs to be resolved to find out absolutely for sure where those lines are. So that's one of my major concerns with this. Another one I have is the appraisal. You know, they're tying the appraisal to what that property is worth to land that has no utilities on it. And they come up with an average of that to charge this, and it has utilities. You know, so I have a little concern about the dollar amount there, because you look at most of the lots around the city of Aztec, if they have utilities, they're a lot more than 18.5 on an acre. You know, I guarantee you that. So, and, you know, that's a concern if we're selling, we want to sell 0.29 acre with utilities, are we actually getting the fair market value? You know, I'm not real crazy about selling city property. I don't have an issue selling it if we're getting a fair value, and I'm not so sure we are. You know, so, you know, I don't know who this guy who came up with calculations, but, you know, this property has utilities. And is it going to still create or still have the open issues that we have for the people on Newman that were promised through the commissions through the years? So, you know, those are just some of my concerns that I'd like to get some answers to.
And Commissioner Padilla, I mean, I think that's a good observation. I think you read the appraisal report very closely and you picked up on that. It did compare, you know, similar properties, but the one big distinction was those properties didn't have the utilities that this particular piece of property. And I'm not an appraiser by any means, and I don't want to even go into that field, but I think that was a good observation on your end. Utilities do add valuation to property most of the time.
Well, and I think the city is amiss if we're selling city property and not getting a fair market value. I've always been against selling city property unless we're actually getting what it's worth. But, you know, that's just one of the issues that I have in that in this whole thing. I mean, I'm not against doing everything as long as we take care of the people that, and the promises have been done by previous commissions. And as I mentioned, you know, it's tough to sit up here, the five of us, and try and make amends to what has happened in the past. You know, and we're stuck there. So, you know that. But if we can put all of this together and get some answers to that, you know, and maybe take another look at it, you know, it'd be a whole different story. So, you know, my recommendation is we're just a little bit ahead of the game before we get all the answers to what we're doing, in my personal opinion. You know,
and hopefully, Commissioner Padilla, I know Mr. Edgerton is on the phone, so hopefully he could address some of these concerns, you know, when he's given the opportunity to talk about, you know, his request and why he's going about it and some of the stuff related to this property. But yeah, I think those are, you know, obviously valid concerns as we try to rectify this situation for everybody involved. So really quick, I'm just going to go through some of these pictures. This is, you know, looking at the property. This is on Newman Avenue. The width right now is approximately around 30 feet. You typically want about 50 feet for a right-of-way for a street, and that includes not just the vehicle one-way or two-way direction of traffic, but also curb and a sidewalk. So as you can see here, this is a property that's actually on Western, just south of the trailer park. That's more or less where this property would line up if there was no encroachment. So it's just to give you an idea, it's about 15 feet, you know, on city property, and that would make it 45 feet approximately in width for the right-of-way. So the fence line obviously cuts that off. The fence line is not the property line. That's fence and mobile home encroaching on city property. This is just to give you an idea of what the other side looks like. You know, they're larger, longer mobile homes, so, you know, there's not a lot of room to play with. Even if they do move them forward, you got about 5 to 7 feet to play with, depending on the different size of the structures. Again, this is the utility line, and this was just a shot of the survey that was submitted. And again, this is just another line, the area of encroachment. So, there's more questions. Be happy to try to address them as best as possible. If not, I know Mr. Edgerton, I believe, is on the line, and hopefully he could address the commission for his request.
Does anybody have any commissioners have any other questions of Mr. Xavier, at least for the moment? You can always come back.
I have, Mayor, I have a question. Mr. Saavedra, the piece of land that is for sale, that we're considering selling, isn't it just a long strip piece and not usable as a site for a home or anything like that? Am I seeing that correctly?
Correct. That's correct. The property in consideration is this strip right here.
Okay, so it couldn't be used for a home site or anything. So it having utilities is fine, but it doesn't compare to a piece of property that a home site, a home could be built on. So my assumption would be that's why the value is less than what we could consider for that much land in another part of the city, because it's just a long, narrow strip, and that nothing is going to really change for access to the utilities or how the city responds to that area, whether we own that piece of property or whether the developer does. That was how I was looking at it. That nothing was really going to change in terms of access to the utilities and so forth. Would that be correct?
You mean, I guess I'm sorry, I guess I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding the question. So nothing would change in terms of accessing the utilities?
Right, I mean, right now, the way things are handled at Cottonwood Mobile Home Park is not going to change when we sell the land to them. We're not going to see any difference in access or their responsibility to the city and to the utilities.
I guess if I understand the question, regardless of the city selling the property, assume that Mr. Edgerton never put forward this item for consideration, and it's still, city property, yes, access is still going to be difficult currently, just because of obstructing the utility lines, yes.
Right. And we're dealing with past mistakes, essentially. Or,
trying to rectify the situation from 2003 to 4.
Yeah, because it would appear if things were going to be corrected, all those mobile homes would need to be moved over. But that's not going to happen. So we're stuck with this situation of this narrow piece of property that they need access to in order to sell the mobile home park.
That's correct, yes.
Any further questions of Mr. Xavier at the moment? Okay. I guess, Mr. Xavier, we're going to give Mr. Edgerton an opportunity to maybe clear some things up, I guess. Mr. Edgerton, are you still on the line? I mean, I see what I believe is
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, we're working to unmute him right now.
I'm sorry?
We're working to unmute Mr. Edgerton right now.
Oh, okay, I see.
So, Mr. Mayor, I should also point out too, anytime there's any encroachment on any type of property, it doesn't matter if it's public property or private property, it always, presents challenges for the sale of that property. Sometimes lenders will go ahead and agree to go ahead and move forward with the sale, but it does create problems. It is a situation that, regardless of Mr. Edgerton trying to sell it to this seller or this buyer, it's always going to be an issue going forward based on that encroachment.
Mayor,
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Go ahead, Mr. Brady.
I just wanted to check and see with Steven, as far as the encroachment goes, it was approved back in 2003 or 4. So, Mr. Edgerton can sell the property with the new buyer has to come before us to ask for another encroachment approval? Or how does that work? Does it transfer to him? What's the process that would be?
That's a great question. So actually, that encroachment, could transfer relatively easy to this new buyer. But from my understanding, and hopefully Eric can speak more to this, the buyer didn't feel comfortable with that issue. And how an encroachment works is when this permit was provided to Mr. Edgerton, it basically states that the property owner and the city acknowledge there is an issue there. And at some point in the future, access that property and take it back, let's just say the sidewalk, the city has every right to do that, and the property owner is made aware. However, the new buyer is just uncomfortable with that uncertainty that's associated with that permit.
Well, I would be too, and I'm less concerned with, that whole situation. I'm more concerned with just getting this cleaned up so it's not someone else's problem in the future regarding the utility lines and everything. So, I just kind of wanted to check, for one, what the process would be for Mr. Edgerton if it were to sell it as is. 2, we need to figure this out regardless to try to clean up what happened in the past. Again, here we are.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, real quick, I believe Mr. Edgerton is trying to talk, and I'm not sure that his connection is. Mr. Edgerton, are you there? Is he unmuted? Yeah, he's unmuted.
He's unmuted. Yeah, I guess he's not available, or he's having trouble with connection or something. If you can hear us, Mr. Edgerton, and you are able to reestablish your connection, let us know. I'm not really sure. I guess we're going to have to continue to proceed. I don't want to leave somebody kind of twisting in the wind due to connectivity, but I guess we're gonna have to move forward. Mr. Edgerton, are you there?
Can you hear me? I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me? No, I'm here.
Cutting in and out. Okay. We're going to get to a point where I'm going to have to move on. Mr. Mueller, any suggestions? I'm about to move on. I mean, we can't.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mayor, I think out of fairness, we're going to have to give him the opportunity. So I guess in consultation with Tyson, maybe we just table this until we get a better connection, or we schedule another date at another time to discuss it.
Mr. Mayor, that was going to be my suggestion as well. I think Mr. Everton would like the opportunity to appear before the commission and explain his side of things. And I think from given the circumstances, maybe we table that. And if we can get connectivity, maybe come back to it and recall it, or if not, I agree with Mr. Mueller that we'll probably have to put it on a different agenda. But that'll also give Mr. Savady some time to discuss some of the issues the commission has with Mr. Edgerton to get some of those addressed.
And I think, based on some of the questions, concerns Commissioner Dia had, and some of the things that Commissioner Randall had also mentioned, it just seems a little muddled. And then with the connectivity issues, I think that might be the best way forward. And I don't, unfortunately, that comes up sometimes. I hate to have to table it over kind of connectivity issues, but I would rather do that and do the right thing and give this.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. I can hear you now.
Oh, great. I was called in on another call and trying to get this left. Okay, so let me tell me where you want to start. So.
Well, I guess we'll kind of start from the start, as far as the encroachment issue, and then any input or any kind of light you can shed on the placement of the power line being underneath some structures, and et cetera. So we'll start, and I'm sure that you can redirect from there or ask other questions.
Sure, I'll talk and you guys can interrupt if you need to. So, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for taking our request tonight. We've been listening to the podcast there, the Google meeting, and been involved. As you heard, we are seeking a buyer for the Cottonwood Mobile Home Park. And it was discussed back in 2003, 2004, when we went through the PUD process. City granted us the permit to encroach on the city property for our utilities and for that privacy fence. And we sure appreciated that. We've been operating for 16 years. Under my recollection, and we can get it resurveyed on the electric, but every one of those meters, if you draw a line basically down the backside right next to the fence, that's where the power was installed, and every pedestal had a pad. We had to pay for that. So I don't know if that, if that's our responsibility or it lies in the city's responsibility, but I was always under the assumption that since we had to put in that infrastructure that we were responsible for it. So we can sure look into the exact placement of those power lines. If at anything they may, a couple of the trailers, the power may run just at the corner. They may have been nudged up to the power lines between the pedestals, but we can definitely look at that. In the future, it could be a requirement that, the trailers be moved forward. Some of those trailers can move a foot or two forward up by the sidewalk, and I believe we can work out a situation either by moving them forward or requiring a smaller trailer to go in to solve that problem. But what comes to our attention as we try to sell to a buyer is that the financing companies, the banks, are resisting. They want to see basically that whole parcel as one. They don't like to finance a piece of property that has an encroached piece of land associated with it, especially if we have, if its appraisal is going off of like rent incomes and such. So the banks are shying away from that because of the encroachment, and therefore my current buyers basically is hinting that the bank will not be able to finance them and purchase that. That's why we're trying to purchase the encroachment for the sellability and the value, of the property. So, and as I look at buyers, I've learned, you have your A, like kind of an A-class buyer and a C-class buyer. And basically what that kind of means in my terms is that you've got a buyer that, an A buyer would be a buyer that runs many mobile home parks, and they know how to keep covenants up, they're well financed, they improve things when they break. And that's the type of buyer I'm seeking, is somebody to keep up the covenants in the park and keep it operating the way I've been operating it in the past. If I'm unable to purchase that encroachment, even if I kept it myself, I have a hard time refinancing and lower rates, making improvements myself if I want to, to improve the road or anything, make improvements to the park. It makes it hard for me to finance as well. A C buyer may be somebody that comes in and says, well, hey, I'll buy your park, but you have to finance it. And these are people that may not be as high quality as the A buyers, is kind of what I'm getting at. And I really would like to turn this over to somebody that can finance it and buy it from us. That's why we're seeking it. And like it was mentioned, we have 23 homes along that Newman Road, 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, families living there. I've seen a lot of stories where they're so excited to put their home in and they have a place where they can, call their own and park their home for very affordable living, for the price of a lot with utilities. It just is just affordable living for people to live in Aztec and to raise their families. And so also, I understand that the commissioner is concerned about the electric, but I believe we can look into that if we need to and resolve that. That GIS, like Stephen said, could be off a foot or two, and that's all it needs to be under a couple of the trailers. But I believe, from what I remember, it's along that back side, right along the fence. So, I understand the residents' concerns on Newman. They've had a street that hasn't been paved, and they're wanting that paved and sidewalks put in. And what I've come up with in over the week of thinking about this, I would entertain the option if the city would accept it, that would like, if I can buy this encroached area and be able to combine it with my legal description, I would like to offer some improvements to Newman. We could put a number on it, like $25,000. If the city would allow it, it could be earmarked for sidewalks or curb on Newman to improve Newman. Because like one of the commissioners said also, it's almost impossible to move out homes if we don't come to a resolution, kind of on the encroachments. It basically states the same. We don't want to change anything. We want to leave the fence where it is. And it's kind of a win-win if we can help the residents of Newman with maybe some sidewalks along their house and curb. I'm not sure what the city has slated for, but maybe they already have somebody, and maybe that pavement project could happen if I pitch in that $25,000, which I'm willing to do. So that's what I would like to give if the commission could let us purchase that property. And again, I think over the long term, it brings in those higher quality buyers that have a clean survey, clean legal description. We can have an easement if the city needs to get in there to work on the electric or anything that's in that area. But, we just appreciate the chance to talk to you tonight, and hopefully we can come upon a resolution.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussions or questions for either Mr. Saavedra, the city manager, or Mr. Edgerton? This isn't really a land use hearing, so I don't want to get too deep into the cross-examination stuff and all that kind of thing. Mayor Pro Tem, you unmuted?
Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
With this new situation of possibly negotiating for Newman Street, it seems like we're going to have to take this back and revamp it before we can present it with this possibility. I personally have great concerns for the people living on Newman and the issues that they have brought up about their road not being paved, no sidewalks, the difficulty of school buses coming down that street. But I don't know how are we in a position that we can actually vote on the sale of this and then look at negotiating? I'm kind of lost here as to all the different moving parts.
I don't believe that will play whatsoever into our decision tonight regarding the sale of this piece of property, any of the other conversation that was had. That's kind of, I don't know if hearsay is the right thing. It's just kind of conjecture right now. We can't make that a condition. To my knowledge, Mr. Goff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that is something that we can work into this right now, because we're just kind of having preliminary conversations, and I wouldn't feel comfortable working that in there personally, because it's just kind of a very preliminary conversation. With that said, I want to focus on merits of what we talked about as far as the encroachment and the sale of that strip of property, the thing we've heard tonight. Commissioner Randall, I'll go ahead and let you unmute, and then I saw Commissioner Padilla as well. Afterward, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe Mr. George, if he's on, or Steve, even if we sell the property, if the issue that we're mainly having is with the utility lines, won't we still have a utility easement? Because from what I understand, even, like on our own properties, there's still a utility easement where the electric department has to have, a certain distance from the property line to service to the meter. I thought the electric owned it to the meter, and then, the owner owns it from the meter to the house. So even if we were to sell it, we would still have an easement that we'd have to get in there. Yes, there might still be houses on there, and if there's an issue, we deal with that at that time. But am I incorrect in believing that we still have a utility easement, not a right-of-way, but we have an easement, even if we sold the property?
I believe your easement would still be there, Commissioner. I personally would feel uncomfortable moving. There's still a lot of unknowns. I think there's Commissioner Padilla directed a bunch of good points. I too think maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, but I'll let the commission decide what they want to do. I think you'd still obviously have your easement to go on there to be able to access the city property, being the utilities on there.
Thank you. I agree. Now, one more thing, Mayor, before we move on again. And I don't know quite how to say this other than just kind of throw it out there, is I want us to try to understand, the sale of the property and what we're doing tonight or in the future if we table it with the Cottonwood property with Mr. Edgerton, I think is a separate thing from the Newman issue. I agree the citizens on Newman having to deal with, that street, and, I've looked at the street in this bad shape, and I can't say, I never even knew Newman was a street. I always kind of looked like an alley to me. But I don't want, I guess I'll not say this other than just saying, I don't know if selling the property, if and when we get to that point, is affecting Newman issue. It's almost a separate issue that we need to take care of that street. But we're not really talking about that right now. We need to talk about property.
Right, I agree, and that's a good point, thank you. Mr. Padilla, or Commissioner Padilla, I apologize, sir, I see your hand there in the distance.
You're fine. I just, a couple things that popped up that Mr. Edgerton said was the GIS could be off a couple feet. Well, that's going to attack the value of that property. Even a couple feet is going to make a difference. So I think that Mr. Goble is absolutely right, and I would move that we table this until we get some more information or some answers to some of the questions that were brought up tonight. I think they were all very good questions, and I would move that we table this till we get answers to those.
All right, noted. Commissioner Lewis, I saw you on mute. I want to give you the opportunity before we move to closing discussion and making a motion either way.
Okay. Yeah, I had a quick, kind of along the same line as Commissioner Padilla. I'd like to know exactly where that electric line is. We have an idea, but I'd like to know if it's under one home or is it under 50. We just need to know that before we can actually move forward, I think. And so that was my point. And I agree with Commissioner Randall. I think the Newman issue is a separate issue, but I do think it's something we need to look at in the near future.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. I think it's safe to say we're ready to move into closing discussion and making a motion. So I would like someone to entertain a motion for business item B. Commissioner Padilla, would you like to make the motion, or?
Yes, I'd be glad to, Mayor. I move that we table the intent to adopt ordinance 2020-508, an ordinance authorizing the sale of certain municipal-owned real property west of Newman Avenue, Derek Etcherson, for the purchase price of $5,400. And I'd like to add until we get answers to the questions that were raised tonight.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
She said
Aye.
Commissioner Padilla,
aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate all the good questions and discussion about this. And I think we are moving into item 10. Why is it judicial hearings or land use? I get to read this script again, so please bear with me. Following hearing procedure is for all hearings on tonight's agenda. Land use hearing registration form is located on the clerk's table. For those who wish to receive a copy of the results from this hearing, you must provide your full name and current